All right, let's examine this idea of equality as it comes out in the poem. I want to take a look at section 10. There are a couple little parts. I'm looking at the beginning and the end of section 10. So I'll just read the first part and we'll talk about it, and then I'll read the second part and talk about it. Alone, far in the wilds and mountains I hunt, wandering amazed at my own lightness and glee. In the late afternoon, choosing a safe spot to pass the night, kindling a fire and broiling the fresh-killed game, falling asleep on the gathered leaves with my dog and gun by my side. So Whitman is a poet of equality in some ways, right? He seems to embrace the physical self, right? He says all bodies are wonderful, all bodies are worthy of worship. And maybe you might think that, maybe you would extrapolate from that he doesn't just think of human bodies, but he would celebrate all bodies. So maybe you think that Whitman would be a vegetarian or something like that, or he'd be in PETA. But that's obviously not the case, right? Because here he's talking about hunting. So I think it's interesting that he seems to be sort of a peaceful guy, but he is talking about killing, right? But really the killing is in a way, he's not just killing for sport, he's using it, they're eating the game, right? Kindling a fire and broiling the fresh-killed game. So in a way, again, it just comes back to the survival of the body. The body is the most important thing, and it's about survival of the body. So there is some violence in here, but it's not just violence for the hell of it. It's violence in order to support the being, the human body, right? And then violence, or at least this image of the gun, comes back again. So let's look at the bottom of this page, and it'll continue on to the next page. The runaway slave came to my house and stopped outside. I heard his motions crackling the twigs of the woodpile. Through the swung half door of the kitchen I saw him limpsy and weak, and went where he sat on a log and led him in and assured him, and brought him water and filled a tub for his sweated body and bruised feet, and gave him a room that entered from my own, and gave him some coarse clean clothes, and remember perfectly well his revolving eyes and his awkwardness, and remember putting plasters on the galls of his neck and ankles. He stayed with me a week before he was recuperated and passed north. I had him sit next to me at the table. My firelock leaned in the corner. So again, the image of the gun comes back, right? But the gun is used for a very different purpose. He's not going out and hunting. It's not an act of aggression, it's an act of protection, right? So he's protecting the physical body, and it's not just his body, it's whose body is it? It's not just some other, it's a slave, right? The runaway slave came to my house and stopped outside. So there's this idea that all bodies are great, and it doesn't matter, all bodies are worthy of worship, and it doesn't matter what the body looks like, what color it is, what preferences it has, whether those are sexual preferences or what sort of religion it practices. All bodies are equal of worship. All bodies are equal of protection, right? And so he is actually protecting this runaway slave in this part of the poem. And I just find that very interesting. And it's him sort of enacting this idea of equality. Parts of the poems are pretty lyric. They just sort of seem like philosophical ranting sometimes. But here we have little images of stories, and the story starts to really embody this idea of equality that he's been talking about.